everyone. Welcome to Behind the Start Line, P3R's podcast, bringing you health, wellness, and event conversations to keep you moving. My name is Jen Bigham, and I am delighted to be your guest host for today's episode. I am a local elite runner. You can find me on Instagram as @localelite. And I love to run P3R's races throughout the year, especially when I can include my family in those races. My husband and I have 4 young, energetic kids, and our baby just turned 1 month old earlier this month. So I just love it all. I love including them and love this podcast. And I'm so happy to be here with you today. On today's episode of Behind the Start Line, we're celebrating International Women's Day with the Magee Women's Research Institute and Foundation and discussing how female runners can and need to consider different elements of their health and fitness. With us today are Dr. Jocelyn Fitzgerald, who is an assistant professor with the Department of Obstetrics, Gynecology, and Reproductive Sciences at the University of Pittsburgh. She was actually born at Magee Women's Hospital, and she completed a fellowship in female pelvic medicine and reconstructive surgery at Georgetown University School of Medicine and her residency in obstetrics and gynecology at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. She earned her MD at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. Welcome, Dr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you so much for having me.
Next, we have Dr. Amanda Artsen, who specializes in obstetrics and gynecology and is certified by the American Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology. She completed her fellowship at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine and her residency at the University of California at San Diego Medical Center. She earned her MD at the Washington University School of Medicine. Welcome, Dr. Artsen.
Thank you. I'm so excited to join you.
And finally, we have Carlianna Cottone. She's the manager of activations and partnerships at P3R, and she helped bring P3R and Magee Women's Research Institute and Foundation together. So thank you and welcome, Carlianna.
Yes, happy to be here. Excited to talk about what we're here to talk about today and the partnership itself.
Great. So Carlianna, can you tell us a little bit about the partnership between Magee Women's Research Institute and Foundation and what all is a part of it?
Yes, of course, I'd be happy to. So all of us at P3R just want everyone to move, and women runners make up a large portion of those who move with us. And this podcast is being released on International Women's Day in 2022. And it's a great reminder of how important it is for us to educate and empower women on their health and fitness journeys. In addition to today's podcast, we're also celebrating International Women's Day with a second round limited edition of our Ready, Set, Move box. $10 from each box supports Girls on the Run Pittsburgh. There may be a few left as well, so head over to p3rstore.com to get yours.
Can I say, Carlianna, I so love seeing the little sneak peeks on Instagram, of like what's in the next one. Yes. And the new box for the Women's International Women's Day is so exciting. I'm seeing these products that I love, and I love the new things as well. But the koala clip I have used for years. It's Yes, it's an awesome way to just carry your phone. You can carry credit cards and your keys as well. You just, clip it on the back of like virtually any sports bra. It stays put. You don't have to think about it, but if you need it, you can easily pull it out. And it's just great that so many women are going to get a chance to know what this product is and use it. So I'm really excited about this one.
Yeah, Jen, it's funny you say that because actually, full disclosure, I'd never heard of koala clip before, and I would try to put my phone in the back of my sports bra to run with, not knowing that there's actually something created for that. So I'm excited for everybody to get their hands on this one.
Yes.
Great. Well, we'll be sure to send yours out shortly.
Thanks.
So on top of that, Magee Women's Research Institute and Foundation will also be the presenting partner of the 2022 Dick's Sporting Goods Pittsburgh Marathon Weekend of Events PR Bell. So if you're looking to PR, make sure you find Magee Women's Research Institute and Foundation's PR Bell in the finish line.
Great. Well, it's such a great partnership, and we're lucky that P3R is so focused on making sure that all runners have the information they need to stay healthy. And, participants who are listening, get ready to ring that bell because, do you know that PR stands for personal record? And this may be your first time completing a 5K, or for your kids, one of the kids races, and all the way up through the marathon. If you've never completed the event before, you have an automatic PR that day. So make sure that you appreciate what you've put into this and your hard work and dedication and what you did that day, and make sure that you are ringing that bell to celebrate yourself. And speaking of race day, Doctors Fitzgerald and Artsen, I hear you're both training for this year's Pittsburgh Marathon. So how is that going? Dr. Fitzgerald, you look so excited to answer.
I don't know if excited is, I mean, obviously I'm excited. I'm excited to tell you that I'm now training for the full marathon. Dr. Artsen and I are on a relay team together.
That's
So
awesome.
I have run marathons before, but this is not the year for me. But we really wanted to support, and we wanted to do, with COVID, Dr. Artsen and I are in the same practice. We're surgical partners. We're also friends. And we really wanted to do something outdoors to raise, some morale in our division. It's been hard to be a healthcare worker for the last couple of years. But it's hard to get together for happy hours and things indoors, especially many people with young children. So this is a great way for us to have some team bonding, I think.
Yeah. How are you feeling about it, Dr. Artsen?
Yeah, I, like Dr. Fitzgerald, run marathons in the past, and I am glad that my participation is going to be a joint effort this year. I am just over a year postpartum from having twins, and I have an older girl. And so getting back into running has been, a process that I have both enjoyed, but also, appreciate the challenges of it. And so it's been so lovely to have colleagues that it's also, being physical together, getting outside and doing these exercises together, are important to them too. And that's been really motivating for me too. So it's really nice to have, some like-minded people around.
Yeah. Do you feel the same, Dr. Fitzgerald? Because I'm sure you have an incredibly busy life. How are you fitting your training in?
Yeah. I rely on Dr. Artsen to text me and tell me that we need to go running this morning.
I love it.
Buddy. Yeah.
I do not. I'm going to say that her children also are instrumental in getting her awake a little earlier than me, because I do not have children myself. So, her little ones are getting me out of bed too, which is just great. So I feel good about it. It's getting warmer. So our training runs are starting to become more frequent. We were waiting out the ice and snow for a little while there.
Oh, yes. Well, you should be totally proud. You don't have to do the full marathon, to have a great Pittsburgh Marathon weekend. And, I've heard the relay is a lot of fun. I have a friend who dressed up as a hot dog one year as part of the relay. Everyone dressed up as something, and it was so amazing. It was like her favorite thing ever. And she loves the Pittsburgh full marathon as well. And, I have a feeling, if you're these kind of people, maybe you would have some women's health costumes, I mean, I saw a little prop with you today. I don't know if they make costumes like this, but
They do.
maybe you could think outside of the box and see what you can come up with to make your relay just extra special this year.
Oh, they exist. I'll have to get my uterus costume out and dust.
I feel like a bladder hat would be just perfect.
Oh, they would. I love it. Well, don't give away too much. We're gonna have to follow you on race day and see what happens here.
See what happens. Us and the rest of the Magee Urogynecology team. Shameless
Yeah.
plug, anyone listening, if you'd like to donate to our team, we do have a fundraising link. It'll go to MWRI, so think of us.
Yes, great. Thank you. So doctors, you're both gynecologists. Can you explain how a woman's body is impacted differently by exercising?
Dr. Artsen, if you want to take this one, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously women have a little bit different mechanics in their pelvis than men, and they're more likely to become symptomatic with pelvic floor disorders, which can be a combination of the connective tissue, the nerves, and the muscles in the pelvis, and the way that they act together. And things like childbirth and pregnancy can also really affect all of those structures, even in women who have totally healthy, normal pregnancies and births. But it's not the only thing. We also see lots of women who have never had babies who have other reasons for having their pelvic floor muscles or nerves not behave the way they're supposed to. And I've met a lot of runners who actually they don't know really what the options are or if what they're experiencing is normal. And sometimes women pull back from physical activity because they're concerned about their bodies. And it, to me as a doctor, my whole goal is to get people out there doing what they want to do so they can live their life to the fullest and show them what their options are and also take away some of that fear.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I think a lot of people say, oh, I'm having this problem, but I'm worried about going to the doctor because they might tell me I can't run. And it's just great to hear you say you want people to be out there. You want to help them continue doing what they love and do it, the right way and safely. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Dr. Fitzgerald, you specialize in pelvic floor disorders, right?
I do. We both do.
Okay,
Dr.
great.
Artsen and I. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you define prolapse for us and how those of us who are interested in running and other physical activities can take care of ourselves?
Yeah. Wow. That's a big question. So I guess I'll start from the top. We both are specialists in a field called urogynecology, which is also known as female pelvic medicine and reconstructive surgery. So we really focus on the muscular bowl of the pelvic floor. Here, I'll hold up my model I brought out just for this purpose. The pelvic floor are all of these muscles that attach like a bowl to the inside of the bony structures of the pelvis, and they hold three things: your bladder, well, four things, I guess: your uterus and vagina, and the rectum, and then all of the functions that those organs need to perform as they run through this bony and muscular bowl. So your question was, what is prolapse? So that's a big question, but the short answer is the word prolapse means to fall out or fall down. And prolapse, when we're referring to the pelvic floor and the organs that the pelvic floor holds in, includes the bladder, the vagina, and the rectum. Anytime one of those organs is prolapsing, it means that it has descended from its original position, maybe before, you had a baby, but that's not the only thing that can cause these organs to sag and fall. Obesity can do it, chronic cough, very rarely like chronic exercise, but you can see it in someone with maybe, a connective tissue issue who does like a lot of really heavy lifting. But to answer your question, those organs can descend and you can feel them as a bulge, usually in the vagina. And the second part of your question is how can women sort of take care of themselves? And I assume that you mean how can they maybe prevent this from happening?
Right.
And that is a loaded question. No pun intended. Dr. Artsen does a lot of stress loading research on these organs to figure out exactly what loads and stressors these structures need to see in order to result in prolapse. And sometimes, it's you have a baby. Sometimes there's nothing that we know of yet that can necessarily prevent it. But I think the answer and resounding theme of this podcast will be that knowledge is the most important thing, just knowing that these disorders exist and can happen so that you know where to go if you experience them. And the second part of my answer would be, and I think will be a resounding theme, is that any athlete, if they underwent an injury, which we'll call childbirth, like an injury, would get rehab before returning to performance. And pelvic floor physical therapy is super important for these types of symptoms in women. So that's my long story long of that.
Yeah, that's so great to hear you say that. When I had my first kid, she just turned 12 actually. I really didn't hear about pelvic floor PT. And now, I'm hearing about it all the time. I've been there myself, and it's just nice that there are physicians like you working together with these PTs and helping women, because it just so often seems like, like this part of my life is over, or this is my new normal. And there's just so many resources out there. So thank you for what you do.
Yeah.
And then I guess for either one of you, I also thought, Dr. Artsen, you were talking about even younger women, you know, that people think, oh, I had a baby and that's why I have these problems. But both of you kind of talked about, you know, it could be younger women, it could be older women, there could be other reasons why this is happening, you know, or like that this is happening too. It's not just, I just had a baby and prolapse is a problem. Is there anything else you wanted to speak to about maybe less likely you know, cases than just having the baby?
Yeah, I mean, I think that athletes in general, female athletes, have a really high proportion of urinary incontinence, whether they've had a kid or not, because the amount of stress that, you know, elite athletes put on their body. And I, you know, so much admiration for that. But it is a big stressor on the body. And I think that women don't always know that, you know, that they don't necessarily have to live with, you know, that there are strategies to avoid it. And as Dr. Fitzgerald said, you know, unfortunately, from a prevention perspective, we don't have a lot to offer people. There are just a few studies that have come out recently about pelvic floor physical therapy as prevention. We know that it's really good to help coordinate the muscles. Our physical therapists do a really excellent job on education about how the pelvic floor works, what you're taking in terms of fluids, how that, you know, influences how the bladder and the vagina behave. But we don't have, you know, really great prevention strategies right now, which, you know, I think is kind of the holy grail when it comes to this problem. But yeah, we see it in young women, and it may be genetics. It may be just a natural difference in their connective tissue, as Dr. Fitzgerald mentioned. And then we know things like smoking and radiation and pelvic trauma are also more rare, you know, causes of pelvic floor disorders. Oh, and I will say, I guess the only thing we really know about prevention is avoiding chronic constipation, because if you are chronically constipated, that is the one modifiable risk factor that we know of that, you know, we need to take care of so that it doesn't cause other problems.
Yeah. Do not strain on the toilet.
Yeah.
See someone about that if you do.
Right. And there's so many safe options to take every day. Like, I think, you know, people don't really realize that just like these other things we're talking about, you also don't have to live with constipation. Like, if prunes and coffee or whatever your home remedies aren't working, there are safe everyday medications that are not addictive.
Yep. Totally agree.
Thank you. So you sort of brought this up, Dr. Artsen, not to go like right back to you, but, you know, since I was a little girl and in social circles, even now, you know, of mom friends and having my 4 kids, this comes up so much, especially in, you know, after people have, you know, given birth. Is it normal to pee when you sneeze or cough?
No.
Yeah, you can both answer this.
Common.
Not common, but it's not
normal.
normal. Okay. Okay.
No.
And then, and as you age, because it just seems like people are always saying, oh, haha, you know, oh, I peed my pants, I have to leave the playground now, you know. I mean, you hear this all the time. It's very common, and you're just setting the record straight now.
Yeah. If a doctor ever tells you that you have to live with it because you're getting older, maybe see a second opinion.
Okay.
Definitely.
And Dr. Fitzgerald, also with working out, same thing, I'm guessing, not very common, but not normal and not okay.
To leak when you exercise, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's common, but it's not normal. There are absolutely treatments for it. And it does, I don't know if it's so obvious to people necessarily why it happens to women so much more than men. Women, by evolutionary and necessary design, need to have a larger, I'm going to pick up my model again, like a larger hiatus. Like, this space is bigger. Like, men don't have obviously a vagina, but like that represents like a larger triangle of space, like that women need so that you can have a baby should you choose to. Men just like don't have those openings. And so their urethra is so much longer and they have so much more pelvic floor support and protection of the neurovascular structures of their pelvis compared to like women's urethras, which are 3 centimeters long compared to like 6 centimeters long. And so it just doesn't really, men do get incontinence, but not nearly at the rates that women do. So women have very much normalized the fact that since it happens to like all of their friends, that they collectively go to CVS and buy all these pads and all these products and live with it forever. And I mean, if you have a baby when you're 30 and you live to be 100, that's like 70 years of pads and leaking. That's crazy. So we do not want people to think that they have to live with that problem.
Wonderful. Thank you for putting that out there. And I hope that so many people are listening and that they share this with their friends. And, you know, we worry about this less and less, you know, every day. Dr. Artsen, you constantly receive glowing reviews from your patients, with them especially saying that you explain things in a way they understand. That's huge for those of us who don't have medical degrees. What's something you wish you could explain to everyone listening about how women can best protect ourselves while exercising to make sure we're healthy, but also taking care of our bodies?
Yeah, well, thank you. You know, first of all, let me just say that, like, you know, I do my job for the people that I see, you know, in clinic, and it's so gratifying to me when I am able to like show them something about the way that their body works in a way they understand. And you know, I think one of the most important, you know, things that I mean, honestly, I've only appreciated this in the last 2 years since you know, like I said, I've been through my own pregnancy and postpartum periods, but this is true for everybody, and especially for athletes. Your core and your pelvic floor are really intimately connected. So all of those muscles, the way that they function, have to work together. And so part of the goal of, like Dr. Fitzgerald said, you know, rehabilitation after you've been through an injury, or if you're not using those muscles the way they should, part of that is your core, and part of those is those pelvic floor muscles, and they're so linked. So, you know, I have so many women who are like, okay, I did the core work, you know, but they don't know that the pelvic floor is a big part of that and how important those are to go hand in hand together. So, so that's one thing I would say, that, like, you know, in addition to, like, you know, some of our main messages here of like, don't suffer in silence, you know, come see what treatment options are out there. Don't let this limit your life. But also on a more granular level, like, your whole body is affected by what's going on in the pelvis. So it's, you know, when we're working on the pelvis, we're really trying to give you, you know, make your whole body more optimized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. You know, I don't know if any of you saw this, but this over the weekend in Atlanta, a 95-year-old woman broke the world record for 95 years plus in the 5K. And, you know, if we want to be running from like now through, you know, 95, 100 years old, like, we have to think about these things. You know, we don't have to suffer. And that woman is just goals. Her name is, I think, Betty Lindbergh. She ran it in under an hour. I mean, it's just amazing. It's amazing. And yeah, what you're doing, I mean, like, educating people. I just really hope we can get this podcast out to so many people. A little bit off subject, but while we're talking about, you know, completing races and such, Dr. Fitzgerald, I saw on your social media that maybe it's necessary to drink 8 glasses of water a day. Can you share more about that?
Oh my God. Of all the things I post on social media, that will be the one.
It's a great feed. Yeah.
It's so funny. And actually there's like some urogynecologists that like got into this. I think it was with Kendall Toole, like the woman who was a Peloton instructor, because she posted something like, drinking the recommended amount of water is a full-time job. And all these urogynecologists jumped on her tweet and were like, that's not true. Like, you don't have to drink that much. And I say that with the caveat that, of course, if you are an elite athlete or any athlete and you're actively exercising, please drink water, like, absolutely hydrate yourself while you're actively exercising. But even my brothers, which is funny, they have these like huge water bottles with all of these like goals on every like checkbox. Yep. And I have patients that bring those in. They're like, I really struggle to drink all the water I need to drink because I'm like leaking or whatever. I'm constantly running to the bathroom. And then I ask them how much they're drinking, and they're telling me they're drinking like 2 liters of water a day, like 120 ounces of water. And I'm like, please stop doing that. Like, you're gonna pee constantly. And not only is it, do I have no medication to fix that because you're drinking too much? It actually is not great for your pelvic floor to be toileting that much. It actually can like sort of change like the way your brain triggers you to feel like you always need to go. And plus, if you always feel like you're tensing your pelvic floor because you constantly have to pee, that causes the opposite problem where it gets too tight. And then you wind up with a whole myriad of other issues like pain and then actually difficulty emptying in the future. It does not go well. So long story short, I guess, you do not need to drink more than like 64 ounces of water a day. Drink if you're thirsty. Do not think just because your urine is not clear that you're somehow not hydrated. That's not a thing. That's a total myth. Obviously, we want to avoid like super dark urine and dehydration, but if you're thirsty, you should drink. And if you're not, you don't have to be worried that you're going to slide into dehydration, especially if you're a young person with well-functioning kidneys. You do not need to worry about that.
And I think something that other people don't realize too is that, coffee and tea, like all your fluids count, because
You do.
people are like a constant coffee drinker. If you, like me, love your cup of coffee every day, like your body's used to that and it's not dehydrating you. It counts as part of your fluid intake. Dr. Fitzgerald is absolutely right.
It might irritate your bladder because coffee is a bladder irritant, but it won't dehydrate you. It will just make your bladder spasm a little bit because it's very acidic and is irritating. Besides that, though, it is fine.
Oh, thank you so much for clearing up those myths and misconceptions. I really appreciate it. You doctors are so much fun. Thank you so much. I learned so much today, and I can't thank you enough for joining us. But before we wrap up, what's one thing you wish every woman knew? Dr. Artsen, you want to start?
One thing I wish every woman knew. I would just say that like you deserve to be heard. And that's like in your doctor's office and outside your doctor's office. But like you deserve to be heard about your symptoms and your pain and your body. And if you're not being heard, like then that's not right to you. That's not what needs to be happening.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Totally.
Thank you.
I just wanted to highlight something since we are here, that a very new article that was published this year, 2022, the first set of formal guidelines was published in the Journal of Women's Health Physical Therapy for the evaluation of the postpartum runner and evaluating with actual tools readiness to return to running. And depending on where someone is in this 4-phase flow chart that they propose, they actually have like workouts in this paper that they recommend for how to get back, to your baseline. And it just was really great because it was written by a urogynecologist and a pelvic floor physical therapist, obviously both of whom are very interested in this subject as runners themselves. They even made a video to go with it. And they performed this running readiness screen, an impact readiness score, a pelvic health symptom score, and some psychological variables that include things like how much sleep are you getting? What is your mood like postpartum? Are you breastfeeding? Like things that are specifically needed in the postpartum runner. And I would be happy, I'm gonna give the link to anyone that would like to read this or take it with them if they're seeking an evaluation postpartum for running. And they mention, it's 4 phases. The first phase are women who actually are not ready to run, and they assess, if you can't walk for 30 minutes without some symptoms, you're probably not ready. Phase 2 is a walk run program. Phase 3 is increasing your mileage. And then phase 4 is progressing your distance and your speed based on, of course, your baseline, but not more than 10% per week, while you are constantly monitoring all the things, sleep, mood, lactation, like the entire time. And the last thing I'll say is they have, with exclamation points at the bottom, they list things that increase the likelihood of running related pain if you have 4 or more of the following, and I'll just list those off. So the first one is if you're a novice runner, that is a risk factor for increased pain, prior running injury, a vaginal delivery, unfortunately, incontinence symptoms, and less than 6.8 hours of sleep per night, which
Wow.
I don't even know that I get that, and I don't have kids, but it's sort of a framework at least to sort of gauge where a postpartum runner might be. And I think this flow sheet is nice because it really normalizes and provides a plan for a woman to follow. So
Yeah.
Thank
And
you,
Just wanted
Dr.
to highlight.
Fitzgerald. That is just awesome to have. We would love to put that in the show notes. And there are so many question marks. I mean, becoming a parent is so wonderful and there are so many wonders, but there are also so many worries and question marks. And sometimes movement just falls to the wayside because you don't know what to do, or you are looking for that thing to do for yourself, and so you just start back way too early and you set yourself back so far.
Yeah.
I think that people will really get a lot out of that. Thank you for mentioning this new research.
Definitely. I just think it's really stunning that, well, I guess maybe it shouldn't be stunning when we consider that women weren't even allowed to run marathons until the 1970s. I'm sure you have podcasts on that, but it's taken another 50 years since that time for a guideline like this to be written so that physical therapists can guide postpartum women back into activity. And it was published in 2022, which is sad, but at least we have it.
Dr. Artsen, did you have anything to add to that?
I was just going to say, if you're like me when you're postpartum and you just, as you mentioned, Jen, you just want to get back to your level of fitness that you were at before, really having a chance to optimize all your muscle function before you really hit the road doing those, longer runs. I think that your recovery will be so much better. And this guideline, it's not saying don't do anything for the first 2 to 4 weeks. It's saying first rehabilitate and build strength and then build up, because at first when I saw this, because there's some advice to women out there not to run for the first 3 to 6 months postpartum.
Yeah.
And that might not be bad advice, but it is bad advice to say you can't do anything for that time, or there's no way to assess when you're ready, and to only make it time-based instead of based on your symptoms and your recovery. There may be some women who are ready much sooner. There may be some women who are ready later based on the rest of their recovery, like you mentioned. So, like you said, I think having this plan and also just knowing that you don't have to do it alone. Your physical therapists, these pelvic floor physical therapists are really specifically trained in guiding you through optimizing your pelvic floor muscle and your core function.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Totally agree. It is not time-based. It is definitely, as Dr. Artsen said, symptom and performance-based.
Right. And also if you have a pelvic floor symptom, you feel a bulge, you're leaking urine when you run, that also doesn't mean that you just can't run anymore, right? It doesn't mean that you have to give up something that you love. It just means that you should be in evaluation to help prevent it from happening and from getting worse. And it's not something that, you have to give up. It's just something that it's now you have this little warning, okay, there's something that you need to optimize so that you can heal.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day again to be here. Thank you, doctors. Again, I learned so much. I hope everyone in Pittsburgh and beyond listens to this podcast and follows your advice. That wraps up this episode of Behind the Start Line. Be sure to follow along on social at Run with P3R and email us with any questions you have at behindtheline@p3r.org.